always try to pick sort of the non-popular ones, as well as to bring awareness to some of the cases that aren't solved yet, get that information out there. So I feel like you're very far from me today. Hold on, we're gonna do a little adjusting. There we go. There we go, there we go. I think you cut out a little bit for a second, so anyway, I got this new chair and the arms don't go all the way up to the table and it drives me insane. So anyway, just, filming problems. Anyway, ignore my craziness. It's just quirks. We are going to talk about Aimee Lavis. He was the second of 5 children to his parents, Karen and John. The family of 7 lived in Manchester, England, where there was often not quite enough money to go around. I feel you. Now, despite his surroundings, they didn't really live in the most upscale neighborhood. 8-year-old Aimee was described as a bright and happy young boy. Like other boys his age, he enjoyed playing outside, riding his bike, and he loved trains. So every day after school, weather permitting, Aimee would kick off his school shoes and race upstairs to change into his play clothes. He spent most of his afternoons with his friends in the street playing football or whatever game they had imagined up that day. So May 5th of 1997 was the United Kingdom's May Day celebration. This is a bank holiday, so schools were closed and many people also got the day off work, and it actually had given them a long weekend. And for Aimee and his friends, they were super excited. They didn't have to wake up early or go to school, and they could do whatever they wanted, basically, for the entire day. That morning, Aimee woke up, got dressed, and headed outside to play. Now, he wasn't alone in the beginning. His brother John also joined him. The children played in the street for a few hours, moving in and out of the road to let cars pass by. So there's not an exact time, but sometime that day, John decided to go inside, leaving Aimee outside. And that is the last time that we know of 8-year-old Aimee's whereabouts. At around 5 p.m., the street lights began to glimmer with a familiar warm glow, and the Lavis family began to set the table. But one seat remained empty. Aimee was nowhere to be found. And at first, Karen and John Sr. just assumed that he was so busy playing with his friends that he lost track of time. But as the hours went by, they got more and more worried. Aimee hated the dark, and he always made it home before sunset. So when it got dark, Karen sent one of his sisters outside to search for him, but she was unable to locate her brother. At this point, they kind of raise the alarm. They start searching everywhere. Playgrounds, local hangouts, Aimee's friends' houses. But they can't find him. So at this point, they call 999, which is the emergency line. And at first, as they usually do, investigators thought that Aimee might have just run away, especially because he'd recently been grounded after coming home late with his pockets stuffed full of candy. He had told his friends that he didn't want to stay at home anymore, fearing that he'd be punished again. streets, searching behind cars, behind bushes, and in the numerous abandoned buildings that littered the streets. Each person shouting Jamie's name, but there was no reply. The police also began their search, focusing on abandoned buildings and factories around Openshaw, places where runaway kids often hid. But Openshaw was a sprawling, run-down area, and it made this search seem kind of overwhelming. Desperate for leads, the police held a press conference, and the investigation escalated quickly. It actually turned into one of the largest police operations Manchester had seen in decades. Helicopters, search dogs, and extensive manpower was deployed to find Jamie. A breakthrough seemed possible on Thursday, May 15th, when a caller reported seeing Jamie with a young man who had a distinctive birthmark on his neck. A composite sketch was created and pretty widely circulated, but it led nowhere. Meanwhile, Jamie's disappearance is basically tearing his family apart. His father quit his job at Manchester Airport to dedicate all of his time searching for his son. Jamie's 15-year-old sister dropped out of school to take care of her younger siblings, allowing their parents to focus completely on finding Jamie. Investigators believed that Jamie might have gotten on a bus on the day that he went missing. This was an idea fueled by Jamie's love for bus rides. It was just something that he found so exciting. One day, Jamie's 12-year-old sister Jane was out searching for him when she struck up a conversation with a man named Vickers. He was the driver of bus 219 on the day that Jamie disappeared. But little did anyone know this encounter would change the course of this investigation. Vickers told Jane that he remembered seeing a young boy around 10:30 in the morning at Ashton Station on the day that Jamie had disappeared. Darren asked, "Was your brother wearing a dark blue Reebok tracksuit?" And Jane confirmed that that was exactly what her brother had had on that day. Darren claimed that Jamie had introduced himself as Dale, that he was carrying an unlimited bus pass, which allowed him to ride as much as he wanted. He said that he sat on the front of the bus, staring out the window quietly, occasionally chatting with Darren and a few of the passengers. Darren said that Dale spent hours riding on the bus around the city, and he really didn't think much of it because he had the right ticket. A few passengers from that day were questioned, and they remembered seeing Jamie on the bus. Darren assured Jane that he would call the police and even visited Karen and John at their home to tell them what he knew. Can you even? Despite these new details, the investigation into Jamie's disappearance stalled. But by mid-June, 6 weeks after Jamie's disappearance, investigators managed to get their hands on some CCTV footage from Ashton Station, and it did show Jamie boarding bus 219, headed toward Manchester. Now, officers told Karen and John that, which I can't even imagine, Jamie was unlikely to be found alive due to the amount of time that had passed. But his parents refused to give up. and she said, "He's such a sweet, chatty boy. I don't want to think negatively, but part of me feels like he's not coming back. Another part of me hopes that he's still out there alive, and someone is taking care of him. We search for him every day and every night." Jamie's family appeared on a true crime TV show, bringing even more attention to his case. Shortly after this, a tip came in that Jamie's body was allegedly buried in a shallow grave, 5.5 miles from Openshaw. On Friday, June 27th, over 100 officers and police dogs combed that area for 3 days. Despite this massive effort, no evidence and no Jamie. From the start, police kind of had their suspicions about one person. I wouldn't say it was from the start, but that's what articles said. Darren Vickers, the bus driver who was the last person to report seeing Jamie alive. So he went to the Lavis' house and he offered his help, and they gladly accepted. Darren Vickers was 28 years old. He was married with 4 children, but he spent countless hours helping Karen and John. He brought them food, he looked after their kids, he lent them his car so they could search for Jamie, and even went out and searched for Jamie himself. Darren became a constant present in their lives. He spoke to the media on their behalf. There's this picture of him holding up Jamie's photo, and it's been folded and creased, and you can tell that he's been carrying it around with him since the incident happened. He's staring into the camera and he is pleading for help in this case. Karen described him as the family's pillar of strength in this time. He was someone who gave them hope and courage to keep going, to keep searching for Jamie. But Darren Vickers' closeness raised some red flags, not just for the police, but for me. Why was he so involved? Why did he care so much? Why wasn't he at home with his own family? So they bring him in to question him, and they actually held him for 24 hours, which upset his family, upset the Lavises. It made Karen and John believe that he was being unfairly targeted. They even celebrated his release with a party. But despite all of this, the police, they let him go, but they weren't done investigating him. They searched his house, they searched his car. They initially found nothing incriminating, but later on discovered a blood stain on the backseat of his car. This was sent away for testing, and it came back that it wasn't Jamie's blood, but one of Darren's children, who suffered a nosebleed. So, as Darren is taking care of the Lavises and searching for young Jamie, his relationship with his wife deteriorated, and he got closer and closer to Karen and John. Feeling indebted to him for all of his help, they invited him to stay with them while he was working out the problems in his marriage. Karen and John even gave up their bedroom so that he could sleep comfortably, while he helped their children and even took them to swimming lessons and helped with homework. Their bond grew so close that Darren asked Karen and John, which this is completely outlandish to me, if he could be the godparent to... No, I got it backwards. He wanted them to be the godparents to his unborn child. Videos of Darren's interrogation and the search of his house leaked and the media coverage intensified. During one interview, a now famous and completely atrocious photo was taken. Darren is shirtless. He is sitting between Karen and John on their sofa, and he has his arms outstretched on each of their shoulders. Darren continued to insist that Jamie was alive and probably being cared for by someone too afraid to let him return. This statement raised further suspicions and left the public questioning his true motives. Solving this case was particularly challenging for the Manchester police. Darren was seen as this trustworthy figure by Jamie's family. However, when Jamie's sister Jane first spoke to him, he had promised to call the police and tell them what he knew, but he never did. Statements from the bus passengers of that day directly contradicted Darren's version of the events. They reported that Jamie wasn't sitting quietly by the window watching the city pass him by. Instead, he was running up and down the aisle, acting like Darren's assistant. He was allegedly organizing tickets, even shifting the gears of the bus at one point, allegedly, which caused the bus to jolt and lightly hit a small barrier, making the passengers jolt forward. Darren himself treated the bus like a playground for kids. He let them shift gears, play with the ticket machine. He presented it like a game. Witnesses recalled Darren patting Jamie's head and even giving him 50 pence to buy a drink. Their closeness was so apparent that passengers thought that Darren was Jamie's father. One of the women even asked Jamie, "Did you come to work with your dad today?" And she remembers Jamie saying, "No, my uncle." But Darren's claim that Jamie had an unlimited ticket turned out to be a lie, because such tickets were not sold to children. Gradually, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. By reviewing the CCTV footage that they got from Ashton Station, police uncovered more suspicious details. Early in the CCTV footage, Jamie is spotted. He's standing alone, and at 11:20 a.m., Darren Vickers appears. He pats Jamie on the head, and the two of them board the bus together. Now, Darren had not shared this detail with the police. Instead, he said Jamie had ridden the bus for 6 hours, and at the end of his shift, he had offered to take Jamie home because of the rain. According to Darren, Jamie refused, saying that his parents were not at home, so Darren dropped him off near his grandmother's house. And Darren suggested that something may have happened to Jamie after that. But at this point, the police are not buying what he's selling them. They dig even deeper, and they discover that Darren had only been hired as a bus driver just a couple of days before Jamie's disappearance. When they receive a copy of his job application, they found out that he had falsified all of his references, except for one. And that person was a convicted child abuser. Investigators started to believe that Darren had abducted Jamie after his shift, assaulted him, and then killed him. However, without actually finding Jamie, they couldn't prove anything. Darren's behavior also raised a lot of alarms in this case. Instead of going to the police as a witness, he went right to Jamie's family. He built this incredibly close bond with them, even moving into their home. Detectives believe he was manipulating the family to access to updates in Jamie's case. By September, 4 months after Jamie's disappearance, the police decide to focus beyond Darren. They interview his mother, his sister, his ex-wife, and 2 friends, but no useful evidence. However, the truth was still starting to come to light. Around this time, 2 teenagers approached the police with a really terrifying story. They said that one night a man had tried to lure them into Reddish Vale Park near Manchester, claiming that he had found 8-year-old Jamie. The man had showed them a picture of Jamie and said, "I think that this is him." He then pointed to a spot in the darkness and asked these 2 teenagers to follow him there to check it out. But these 2 teens were smart and they were like, "No, we're not." So they go to the police and they remembered seeing this man on TV in an interview. Lo and behold, this man was Darren Vickers. So Darren is brought in for questioning for a second time in mid-October. The teenagers who had encountered Darren led police to Reddish Vale Park, where officers had found a dark blue tracksuit and a green child's jacket. This clothing matched what Jamie was wearing the day that he had vanished. These clothes, which were soaked from the weather, were left to dry before being examined. During the investigation, a small jawbone was discovered within the clothing. So police continued to search the area, and they eventually found a child's torso. The arms, the legs, and the skull were missing and could not be located. DNA testing on the milk teeth from the jawbone confirmed that this was the remains of 8-year-old Jamie Lavis. Police believe that he had been assaulted and killed and dismembered within this park. They believe that Darren frequently returned to relive the crime and to scatter Jamie's parts to delay discovery. When Karen was told that Jamie's remains had been found, she refused to believe it, and it is said that it took her months to accept the reality of this, and I can only imagine the devastation that this brought her. John, Jamie's father, was equally devastated. Darren had been his friend, someone that their family trusted deeply at this point. It's been 6 months of this man making them his family, basically. Jamie's siblings also struggled with the truth of this. One of his sisters covered her ears when her parents tried to tell her what happened, completely unwilling to face the terrible details. So, while living with Karen and John, Darren's behavior raised additional suspicions. He had shown unusual attention to Jamie's 11-year-old brother, John Jr., buying him gifts like a bike and shoes. He also took John Jr. on bus rides, leading to several false sightings of Jamie being reported to the police. Investigators believe that Darren used John Jr. to mislead the investigation. In fact, at one point, he had break it, but he didn't listen. So I raised my left hand and I hit him on the head. He fell and hit a pole and collapsed onto the bus steps. He said that when he checked on him, he wasn't breathing, and in a panic, he drove his body to an empty house next to his own. Later, he moved Jamie's remains to Reddishvale Park, where he left him. He ended his statement with, "I didn't mean for this to happen, and I'm very sorry. I hope that this ends it all." So Darren is trying to portray that Jamie's death was an accident, but investigators don't believe anything that he's saying, basically. He eventually told the police that he would plead guilty to spare Jamie's family further pain. Really? Okay. Really don't think he helped with that. Darren's trial began in early March of 1999, 2 years after Jamie's murder. It lasted 7 weeks. His vague confessions and unclear method of killing made prosecution challenging, but Darren's behavior convinced people of his guilt. In court, he accused Jamie's father, John Sr., of the murder, labeling him as violent. Desperate to divert the attention off of himself, he claimed that 5 days after Jamie had disappeared, he and Karen had slept together. He alleged that they had been searching for Jamie in a park when Karen turned to him and confessed her attraction. Darren claimed that they had been together 11 times and that Karen's unborn child was his. That's why I thought that earlier he had asked that he be the godfather of their child, but it was the other way around. He had an unborn child with his wife, and he wanted Karen and John to be the godparents of that child. Karen denied these allegations and even took a paternity test to prove that the child belonged to her husband. She said, "I have been with John for 18 years, and I would never do anything like this to hurt him." But despite this, that infamous, terrible photo of Darren shirtless between Karen and John fueled the gossip. Neighbors vandalized their home, accusing Karen of sleeping with her son's killer. A lead detective summarized Darren's behavior. He thrived on control. He manipulated the victim's family, the media, and even the police investigation to suit his own narrative. Ultimately, a jury of 9 women and 3 men found Darren Vickers guilty after deliberating for 13 hours. Karen cried as the verdict was read. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years, condemning his lies and attempts to obstruct justice. The 2 teenagers that had provided critical information were commended by the judge, and they were each awarded £150. Outside the courthouse, Karen told reporters, "Today, justice for Jamie was served. No child deserves what happened to him, and now Darren Vickers is behind bars, making Manchester safer for children." After his sentencing, within 24 hours, Darren requested a meeting with the lead detective. 4 days later, in a high-security prison, he tearfully confessed to kidnapping, assaulting, and murdering Jamie, and admitted that his accusations against John Sr. were all lies. In prison, Darren made similar admissions to his cellmates, but he spoke without emotion, contrasting his feigned remorse in front of this detective. He revealed that he had targeted Jamie after seeing him pocket bus fares. He also admitted to prowling around with his request was denied. Karen said, Darren's confession lifted a weight off of us. It cleared John's name and proved Darren's guilt, even if it came far too late. Darren Vickers has appealed his sentence twice, but they were both rejected. In 2005, his mother claimed that he had been forced into confessing and that he had fabricated stories to protect his family and friends. Come on. However, police suspected Darren's close circle had conspired to obstruct justice, although none of them had been convicted. In November of 2022, reports surfaced that Darren, then 56, might soon be released. In February of 23, his parole application was under review, but denied, as he was still considered a threat to children. Jamie's family continues to visit his grave every Christmas and on his birthday. Karen heartbreakingly remarked that instead of buying him toys for his birthday, I have to buy him flowers for his grave. She wrote many poems for Jamie, one of which reads, "Of all of the blessings, big and small, having you as my son was the greatest gift of all. Your smile is gone forever. I can never hold your hand again. But the memories we made will stay with me forever." This case broke my heart. First of all, what a creep to assault and harm an 8-year-old defenseless little boy, basically just because you wanted to. And then to basically, like, my words are failing because I'm so horrified, to get yourself so involved with his family. I mean, his parents gave you their bed. You were trusted with their other children. Not only did you assault their son, but you killed him. Like, I'm not saying assault is better, but at least he'd be alive. And then to tell the 11-year-old, I'll throw you out here too. Why didn't the 11-year-old go to his parents and tell them that he had said, hey, Jamie's out here? You know what I mean? I cannot even imagine the terror that this family felt when they realized that they had basically been laying in bed with this murderer. Absolute horror. I mean, you never know people. You never know people. I don't care. I don't care how honest and trustworthy they seem. It's just, completely terrifying to me. And I've never heard of a case where people have gotten themselves this involved in the family, you know, like him going back to the site and dispersing Jamie's remains and things like that. That I've heard of. I mean, Ted Bundy, we've all heard of that. The fact that they still, as far as I could tell, have not recovered the rest of little Jamie's remains is terrible to me. I am glad that they found some of him so that his family didn't spend the last 25-ish years wondering where he is. However, this case just absolutely terrified me. Talk about a snake in the grass. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. I am sorry that I missed last week. It was so cold in this room. I just could not film. It's actually really cold right now. The wind is whipping through. I hope that it's not